Welcome back to Tipping Point, every night at 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on One America News. This segment's Tipping Point, one of the most important free exercises lawsuits in decades. Let me explain. Back in 2005, Washington State and Planned Parenthood, the largest abortion provider in America, teamed up to create regulations that require pharmacies to carry Plan B and Ella, pills otherwise known as the morning after and week after pill, pills that cause abortion after conception. But a family-owned pharmacy in Washington and 2 other pharmacists are taking issue with this regulation because providing abortion pills violates their consciences. Take a look.
This whole case started in 2005 when Planned Parenthood and other pro-abortion groups got together and decided to launch a national campaign to force pharmacists to have to dispense abortifacients.
When this issue first came up, I didn't even know what Plan B was. It just wasn't even on my radar. I took a look at really what was this product about and what did it do, and realized that that's not a product that I could in good conscience sell. So at that point, our process was a process we've done forever and is a recognized process in not only this community, but the pharmacy business in general, and that's refer that customer to another pharmacy that has that product. There's over 30 pharmacies just in our local area that carry the product.
Under this law, these pharmacists can't even refer people to other pharmacies that carry the pills. And there are 30 other pharmacies within a 5-mile radius that do carry them. Joining me now is the attorney for the case, senior counsel Kristen Wagoner, and her client and pharmacy owner, Greg Stormans. Kristen, Greg, it's great to have you both on.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
All right, Greg, let's start with you first. You're a religious man. You oppose abortion. You don't want to carry abortion-inducing pills in your pharmacy, but the government's forcing you to do so?
That's correct.
All right, tell me how this started, how this got started. Was this something that you used to carry and then decided that it was against your conscience, or did they just come to your door one day and say, hey, you're not carrying this, it violates regulations?
My brother Kevin got a call one day from a customer who was inquiring about the Plan B medication. And he and the customer wanted to know whether we sold it in our pharmacy. And he told the customer that he would check, that he didn't know. He contacted a pharmacy and they said, no, we didn't stock the drug. So he contacted the customer back and indicated that it's not a drug we stocked. At that point, he thought the conversation was done. Shortly after that, we had a number of customers who came in and asked for the same drug. We later found out that they were sent by the governor and Planned Parenthood as a way to test to see whether we were going to sell the drug. At that point, my brother and my family and I got together and discussed the issue of the Plan B medication and really affirmed our faith and our religious belief that we will only sell drugs which are life-saving and drugs that are healthy for people. And we just won't sell a drug that terminates a life or results in an abortion. And that's where the case started.
And even though the government has a regulation that was forcing you to do so, Greg, that's incredible that you're standing up for your principles. Kristen, let me ask you about this regulation. So these pharmacies are required to carry this drug from the government telling them what to carry. But the court also concluded that these regulations were not a product of neutral bureaucratic process, but they were political, correct?
Yes, in fact, the quote from the court's decision, which was over 100 pages, is that it was a highly charged political affair that had the objective of, quote, stamping out, end quote, the religious objections to Plan B. And stamping those religious objections out meant that the Stormans were caught in the crosshairs of this political agenda. A 4th-generation-owned business is at risk here.
Kristen, what's your opposition arguing here? Because it seems to me like it's a pretty cut and dry religious liberty situation here that the government can't come in and say, oh, you oppose that morally, we're going to make you do it. What are they arguing?
They're essentially arguing that this rule applies to all objections that aren't exempted from the rule, which is exactly the point. That's very circular reasoning. This law allows referrals for all kinds of secular reasons, like business and convenience reasons. Let's say you have to order 10 pills and you only need 2, or a particular brand of drug you stock and you don't want to stock the other brand. Those are the kinds of referrals that occur every day that are permitted in practice in the state. But the regulations specifically ban in practice religious objections to Plan B. And in fact, the Stormans have been the first pharmacy in the history of these rules and the only pharmacy to be deemed in violation of the rules. They are targeting religious objections to these drugs.
So let me just clarify this. So you can refer to some other, if it's an access issue, you can refer to some other pharmacy for any secular reason, if you're just out of stock, if you don't happen to carry it. But if it's a religious reason that you want to refer, you're not allowed?
That is exactly how the board has operated these regulations in practice. We know in the trial, we had a 12-day trial, 800 exhibits, 22 witnesses, and we had testimony from all kinds of pharmacy professionals that said referral is the standard of care in the medical community, and referral, that includes referrals for conscience. But this regulation and the way the board has enforced it is they allow referrals for every other reason except for religious objections.
All right, tell me about this board, because I know there's some drama, there's some politicking that went into this board, because it's not a neutral board. If I'm not mistaken, and correct me if I'm wrong, they presented these regulations to the pharmacy board, who rejected them because they didn't include the religious exemption or the religious referral. Then the governor waited until these people's terms were ended before he replaced them with people who would agree with his provisions.
Well, it's even a little more egregious than that. What actually happened was the Board of Pharmacy agreed and voted in favor of unanimously a regulation that would protect referral for conscience reasons. Shortly after that, days after that, the governor went into a media interview, into a campaign, and she specifically said in that interview that she would consider replacing board members if they didn't change their position. And then by the end of the rulemaking process, she did replace them, and she replaced them with members that were selected or recommended by Planned Parenthood. She also, at her own urging, got the Human Rights Commission to write a letter to the board members and threatened personal liability to them if they didn't adopt the rule that she wanted. So this was a highly charged political affair that had nothing to do with patient care and everything to do with a pro-abortion agenda.
So she wasn't even passive about waiting until the board members' terms were up. She actively dismissed them from their positions. That's unbelievable. And now you're waiting to see if the Supreme Court's going to hear your case, and they'll decide that on April 15th. What are you expecting from them?
Well, we're hopeful that the court will grant cert and hear this case. As I said, the trial court, they had a 12-day trial. We won with 100 pages of findings. For the Ninth Circuit to disregard that means that it will be the first time in our nation's history that we force healthcare providers to participate in the taking of human life. And we had the American Pharmacist Association, 33 state associations, and 5 other national organizations weigh in with the Supreme Court recently, all supporting referral and asking the court to grant cert on this case and reject the Ninth Circuit's ruling.
And Greg, I want to ask you about the support. This has been a long time. If this has been happening since 2005, that's a good many years. What kind of support or opposition have you gotten personally from people you know or other pharmacy owners? What has that been like for you?
We do have a lot of support in our community. However, initially, we suffered a 30% loss in business, and that was rather catastrophic, notwithstanding the fact that we felt that we were being targeted based on our religious objection to this drug. We also had to go through several business reorganizations, which dramatically affected our staff and myself, and it was very difficult. We had to cut hours, cut wages, and I was the one that interfaces with the employees, and I would be the one that would receive calls from customers or employees who would say, "Hey, I can't pay my light bill this month," or "I need money to pay my healthcare costs," or my daycare provider needs a check. Can you help me? Can you give me some money? Can you make me a loan? I would get these calls each week, and it was a real burden on me. But a lot of that burden was with my staff, and they weren't sure what was going to happen, and it's been a long road, and with the grace of God and our faith, we've managed to continue to run our business, and we're just grateful that we're in the place we are today, and we're looking forward to the Supreme Court taking this on. And the reason why it's so important is because we don't believe the government should be able to put us in a position where we're forced to choose between our closely held religious beliefs and our occupation. And every American should be concerned that the government can step in and take away their constitutional right to exercise their religion.
Greg, you seem at peace with choosing to stand for your principles. I thank you both for coming on. Keep fighting the good fight. Good luck with this case. Please come back anytime and update us as this continues to unfold.